Hello and welcome to Scottish Football Daily, and we're back for the weekly podcast here on a Monday. I am Quinny, and I'm joined as always by Hendo. Hendo, good to see you, my man. How you doing?
Likewise, mate. I'm good. How are you?
Getting there, mate. Getting there. It's been an action-packed weekend from start to finish. Normally, when the League Cup comes around, it maybe isn't what we want at this early stage of the season because teams are getting into a rhythm and a flow, and we want to see how everyone's kind of shaking out. Obviously, Euro qualifiers kind of circling around. But the League Cup action this weekend was a wee bit of a breath of fresh air. It was a nice kind of distraction from the league in a weird way. We've seen a lot of teams doing, maybe making up a wee bit of lost time in terms of results and getting some goals and finding a bit of an identity. And for better or worse, some teams maybe started to write a wee bit of a story for how their season might unfold with progression and in some cases elimination. So I really enjoyed it, mate, and just getting back across it all to see sitting here the week ahead. Tons of stuff coming up on this one. But it all started on Friday. We had a classic Ayrshire derby, which went kind of semi-viral, I think, off the back of it. Wee bit of Friday night action was always good. There was controversy, there was goals, there was manager comments after the game. I had a little bit of everything. Thoughts and feelings on Kilmarnock Ayr?
Well, first of all, Kilmarnock Ayr is one of those fixtures that, because it's not played so often, they don't tend to be in the same league, has a little bit more gravitas when they actually do play. And Ayr maybe went a bit early on social media to start with, putting the place of being there and against them, which didn't necessarily go so well. But it served up a really, really good game. Killie, a little bit symptomatic of their league form so far in terms of being quite open. Ayr being a team who, especially in transition, looked like a really dangerous team. Obviously, Naismith has taken over in the summer, and he's brought a couple of players with him. I thought it was worth highlighting Ross Taylor, who I thought was excellent, both footed, able to go inside and outside, and he got his goal really nicely, tucked it into the bottom left corner. Kelly obviously come back, they get the goal. It's certainly one of the better ties that we've seen, and it had that kind of chaotic action that it's almost going to be a double-edged sword for Killie, and I think we all know that. We've kind of looked at it already. One other thing to point out, or I guess one player to point out, Shoning Larson from Killie made an excellent start to the season, getting in some really attacking areas. So last season, I think he played on both sides of the defence. And in terms of, if you look at it this season, he's popped up, I think, more on the left-hand side than he has on the right. But he seems to be able to get in good positions to sort of sweep home his right foot, get another goal to his tally this week, and obviously finished off with, I feel quite bad, Harry Stone. I seen him have an absolutely great game against Dunfermline in the league last week or the week before, and he gets so unlucky. He gets Kevin Holt trapped under him, spills the ball, and Klushenko with a great finish, chipped over the keeper. It was one of those where it was very calamitous on the line. Great scenes at the end. Killie obviously having a little bite back on social media. So I think it was one that brought a hell of a lot of value in terms of the weekend.
Aye, big
Or
time.
in
It was
terms of
very
Friday.
enjoyable. Yeah, no, totally, man. It was a great opener. I think you make a great point about how infrequent these teams face off against each other and how that adds a little bit of spice, a little bit of sauce into the occasion. Kelly, again, though, I think quite predictably, quite easy to play through. Like Ayr, like you kind of said to me even before the game started, they were built on turning the ball over and attacking spaces. And that's one thing Kelly are quite happy to do now is give a lot of space to the middle of the pitch. So not a surprise that Ayr were really in this game for big periods. You do expect with the likes of Hugo, John Jules, Kilty in that front line that they should really be outscoring Ayr more than anything in this one, and that's really the way it went. I think for Neil McCann, this is a kind of weird game coming out of it. It is a victory, it is in the derby, but to just about squeak it with that calamity you say at the end. Lovely finish from Klushenko, no taking away from it. My jaw dropped when I seen it chipped. You know what I mean? When I seen that's what he did, I was like, what's this guy doing? So fair plays and all that. Well earned and good luck in the next round and all that. But a wee bit of getting off the hook, a wee bit of getting out of jail free on that one. And the way they've started their season, you're waiting for the game where they defend a bit better or their midfield is a bit more compact when they lose the ball. And that's now against three totally different types of opponent that they've just failed to do that. Just saying screw it, and they're just charging on with throwing the kitchen sink at everyone. So it'll be interesting to see where they go from here. But a good win from Killie, I think we would say, yeah. Hard to say it's
I
not.
would agree. No, I would certainly agree. Any win's obviously a good one to get on the board. They've been rewarded with a game against Aberdeen, who are next up slate. I just wanted to highlight, say before we came on air, highlighting a couple of players maybe from each game. Mitchie and Tello really, he's got a great story in terms of where he's came from. So he came from Yverdon Sport, but if you have a look at his career, there's a hell of a lot of teams in a hell of a lot of countries. So sometimes you do get these kind of maverick types that wash up in Scotland. Somehow he's 25, he's a good size, Belgian, and his goal was taken so sweetly, like on the turn, no touch, no backlift. rifled into the corner, and then doesn't get an assist for the third goal, but it's as good as an assist. It was quite a weak ball in from the side from Yogan, and he makes it really with a dummy, stepping over the ball, Nisbet running onto it. That's just game intelligence, and the fact that Aberdeen have managed to add what looked like quite a toothless midfield, quite an efficient midfield. They've added somebody who maybe in past years we've maybe thought that Palaversa might add something, maybe goals from deep or dictating play or whatever it might be. It looks like they've added someone who has quality in the final third and obviously a brain for how do we get the ball in the right position, which is maybe not necessarily symptomatic with the Stephen Robinson team, but maybe it is actually going to become something that we see with a Stephen Robinson team of the future. What did you think about the Aberdeen game?
I found the result very surprising. Dundee were kind of my little soft spot I found for this season so far, and Aberdeen very much on the back foot coming into this game after that. The result they had before it really kind of destroyed the attacking feeling that they had coming into the season with all the signings they'd made. So I think this was a real, maybe not the wake up call, because the wake up call probably came before this, but a real kind of arrival moment for Aberdeen. And I know they got the last minute winner first game of the season, of course, but this was a really convincing win against a really solid team. The Michie and Tello lad, as you mentioned, we covered them on the channel when they signed, and more clubs than Tiger Woods, I think is the expression. But guys like this, I always wonder how many trackies have picked up along the way, how many sets of training gear they've got from all these guys. A guy that's well travelled without really having much of if you look into him, it's really hard to see the track record. It's really hard to see how does this guy show up in Aberdeen necessarily. So when they make a signing like this, you're having to put a bit of trust in whoever signed them, that they know what they're getting or they know what the guy's all about. And didn't he repay that faith on the debut? Very eye catching, and it felt like the main problem I felt with Aberdeen in the first game was Nisbet was like a one-man attack and had no one around him. And then coming into this game, Olasanya was on the left, he was on the right, he was charging through the middle, and Tello, as you mentioned, was very busy as well. And it just felt that Nisbet wasn't by himself up there. They had a bit more numbers, kind of teaming up together, and a really surprising result. I'm surprised they kept a clean sheet, to be honest with you. These pre-game expectations. And I would say I'm surprised that Dundee conceded 3 in this one. So a really good result for Aberdeen, real confidence lifter. And now they can look at 3 games, 2 wins and a loss. For Stephen Robinson, it might feel a lot better quite quickly. He still didn't have his lines in the team, and then he managed to do well without him. So good on him for problem solving on that one. But Dundee, again, I'm reminded of Presley's comments from last season. If you want to win cups, you don't hire Stephen Presley. Sort of thing. So not a big shock, not a big surprise, I guess, on that one.
Yeah, I was just going to add, can these teams find a bit of consistency? That seems to be what the struggle will be for both these teams. Dundee have looked really good and not got the result against Celtic. They've looked really good and got the result in the league. And then they've maybe not looked so good against Aberdeen, a little bit toothless, and they fell to a 3-0 deficit. And Aberdeen, looking across the board, can they find some form that they maybe pick up points when they're playing well? It's almost been the other way where they've been bad and then picked up the points. Now it's when they've been good. So can these teams find a level of consistency? They certainly have a maverick team.
Are they St Mirren in disguise? Is it the same as
Exactly.
last year for Stephen Robinson, where they get a bit of a cup run, but the league's a bit of a pain? Well, that's a funny thing.
100%. And listen, the other good thing or nice thing to see, a bit of a maverick in goals. I don't know if you've seen the Rabona from Matthias Müller. Not only does he go for it, he manages to execute it extremely well. Not exactly what you'd expect from a goalkeeper, but quite funny to see.
Yeah, absolutely love that. It was, again, another one of those viral moments of the weekend. The next game that we had on the running order after that was a game I only caught the highlights of. And thankfully for yourself, Ed, I think you missed this one as well. But we had your boys Dunfermline losing out to Ross County. Some nice play in this one. It was the highlight package was certainly fun to watch. And you boys will be disappointed to lose it at this stage. Ross County, a non-Premiership side.
100%, especially when you've been to the Scottish Cup final, so you've had a taste of Hampden. If you get through what was essentially the easiest tie on paper, you were again 1 game away from Hampden at that point, and it certainly feels like an opportunity missed. Now, just sort of digging down into it, obviously, like you said, some nice play. Nice to see the American come over, so you might not have heard much about him, Alan Oyerworth. So he's came over on loan from MLS with an option to buy. He's 19 years old. He's a Ugandan international. Dunfermline have got a little sort of collection of African players going on just now. I think we've got 5 of them at the club. Alphonse Ahmad, who got the assist, was at the African Cup of Nations with Mozambique. We've got Big Abdullahi coming back at the back, Ghanaian, and we signed Adams Omelikan, I believe that's how you'd say his name. Again, another Nigerian lad who's come in at the same time as Alan. So nice to see the kind of contingency go through. A bit of a shame, only seen one of them starting in terms of, from what I've heard and what I've seen, Ross County were certainly worth their win. And if you look across their squad, I know they had a terrible season last year, but there's so many capable players in there. Talent, they've got experience in like Akil Wright, Connor Randall at the back. Lewis Strapp's played a lot of games at the championship level. Brian Graham up top, can't get much more experience than that. And Neil Lennon was extremely complimentary at the end of Brian Graham, and how his work rate at 38 years old was something that he said our strikers don't have, which is certainly a big rallying cry to the boys there. Adam Emsley as well, be interesting to see how he gets on in his career. He had a really good start, I believe, at Cove on loan. Ended up at Ross County with that kind of mismatch of a season last year. And Ross County have certainly, they seem to have a good blend. And Kettleware certainly stopped the rot, a club that obviously knows very well. In terms of the actual goals themselves, so the first one's a bit of a weird one. I think there was a slip at the back post. Fraser, it might have been a foul, might have been a slip, we don't know, but seemed like a very soft goal. Dunfermline obviously get the nicely worked goal back, and then Andy Todd, basically howler of the week, I think you could say. He has a diving header in the first half, which he puts back across his own goal, and then secondly, he has a ball which is at his feet, which he could just sweep home, and he goes for the diving header again, and he doesn't get quite enough on it. So he is, I think, the zero of the week. And of course, maybe Richard Chin being the hero of the week with an unbelievable finish at the end. Ross County well worth their victory, and they're into the last 8. Really impressive for a League One team.
When I seen that guy stooping down for the header, I did think to myself, the amount of times you see that, it's not super regularly, right? But you see it often enough that guys have just got their eyes locked on the ball and they're just like, I'm meeting this with my head. And there's just no change of gear sometimes where it's like, oh no, this is actually dropping. When, yeah, I did find a big opportunity miss. And the boy Chin, I heard the commentator say a former Rafe player. So there's a wee bit of sauce and spice on that goal for him as he lashed at home. A very eye-catching goal, it must be said as well. But yeah,
Absolutely.
great to hear your POV on that. As I say, I'm not too much across these teams. And then took us on to the main game I watched at the weekend. Dundee United were at home to Celtic, and Dundee United, I think, quite similarly to Aberdeen for me, I felt quite positive about coming into the season. They had a positive enough result for match day 1, and then match day 2 couldn't have been really much different for them by contrast. Coming into this game, they were always going to be up against it. And, you know, when the game was kicking off, I feel bad for Jim Goodwin. First 3 games of the season, Rangers, Hearts, Celtic, you know what I mean? It doesn't really get any tougher. And the game goes very much in Celtic's favour, and Celtic very much continue on the form that we've seen in Kilmarnock. I think this is a real good, similarly for what it did for Aberdeen beating Dundee. I think this win for Celtic was very good because Dundee United, nowhere near as open as Kelly, a lot more formidable. They lost 4-0, but they hit the woodwork 5 times. So on a different day, who knows how this could have went. Butterfly effect makes it 1 each, or maybe they take the lead at 2-1 at some stage. You never know how it could have panned out. So one of those games that had a lot of controversy as well. All I heard about was handball chat and the aftermath of it. Be interesting to hear your thoughts on that, mate. I thought a great performance from Celtic. I predicted 4-0 before the game, so I was quite chuffed on that one. And Dundee United, I don't think that they surprised me in this game. Defensively good, midfields were okay, but couldn't really get through the middle. And the front line, I just don't think they've got it for top 6 SPFL, really.
Yeah, I think obviously we were quite hot in Dundee United just in terms of who they'd brought in, but like you said, it looks like quite a lightweight front 3. They obviously do work hard, but it doesn't seem like they're able to put pressure on in a very well constructed way. I don't think they've got a very well orchestrated press that's actually forcing teams into mistakes, and then that's essentially inviting them on to the midfield. I think it's a midfield that lacks dynamism. You've obviously the Aggie, he's not your favourite player, but again, Eskinen, Savelj was essentially in there to start with because he was quite dynamic, he's quite hard tackling. I think they've tried to turn him into something that maybe he's not, or maybe that they thought he was. Obviously, he was in at right back as well, so I don't know. I feel like he should be giving them defensive solidity, but I don't feel like he is giving them much. That defence is one that I think I'd highlighted Link at the start of the season. I think he's certainly an upgradable player. Arrow's first game at left back, so he can let him off. And we'd obviously identified how strong their keepers were. I wouldn't necessarily say that the keepers were at fault. I think it's time to start giving, especially Benjamin Negrin, some flowers. I think a lot of people just think he puts the ball in the back of the net, which is actually exactly what you want him to do. But at the same time, he's all-round play, especially since I know Casper, who didn't have the impact again. Cynics might look at it and go, well, now he's went goalless in 2 out of 3. But he actually seemed to bring out a little bit more and almost stretch the space for Negrin a little bit. And when Negrin gets more of that space, you've seen it time and time again. He doesn't need backlift with that shot. And it was textbook Negrin again for the goal. It's so good to see. I still think his celebration's terrible, amping up the crowd when Celtic are winning most of the time, but he was just outstanding in the game. And I think this shows you as well, we spoke before about the verticality of Celtic in weeks gone past. Last season, it was very much more static, letting teams get behind the ball and get into a shape. Celtic hit so quickly. This season has been night and day, and I think that's really testament to the coaches, Sean Maloney, Mark Fotheringham. They obviously had an idea of what they wanted to do last season, but maybe didn't have the personnel. But you have a look at the changes here. Obviously, Scales coming in at left back, Oxlade-Chamberlain in the midfield, Necky out wide, who he looked reinvigorated as well. And Camilo Duran, I think he's had a really solid start. He's one that obviously Martin O'Neill really rates. And I think it's just another game where you have to just take your hat off to Celtic. They were extremely impressive.
Yeah, I pretty much echo everything you say there. For a kind of rotated team, and then we've seen the subs come into the game second half. It was good to see. Celtic in the Kilmarnock game, the United game, I agree as well, very unrecognisable to the back end of like the Ange era and even all the way through the Brendan era, where you do kind of let teams set up and you're dictating the ball, you're moving it from left to right, much more vertical, a lot more narrow. And Negren and Ho are basically like two up front. It's been kind of a lot made of two strikers up top in the SPFL over the last year or two, with other clubs that have been doing it for better or worse sort of results. But Celtic have managed to kind of walk their way into having two up top, with having that kind of second striker in Negren alongside the big target man. And I agree, he could have had a goal at the weekend there. He missed a really good chance that Duran cut in on the left and scooped to the back post for him, and he just managed to lift it like straight up rather than put much of a trajectory on it. So I think he is overall positive contributor. I think very much a lot of credit goes to Sean Maloney, Fotheringham, the coaching staff, for the way Celtic are playing. And competition, Celtic didn't win last year. Good start in that sense. And with now 9 goals in 2 games, confidence is at probably an all-time high for the current batch of team, the current squad that's there, for the tempo they're in, the rhythm. And I don't want to say how easy everything's coming, but everything is clicking quite quickly. It's not like these guys are all dropping in. Like Mika Bauer comes off the bench, looks handy. Even Scales gone into left back. You don't really, it's not Tierney, but you don't really miss a beat. Didn't really feel Scales was opening up or letting anything behind him. And with Taneke, again, Josh Rollins looks like a nice player. He works hard. He knows his position well. He's got good athleticism, but he's just, I don't think he's quite, I said with that Rose and maybe one or two of the other players in this team, I'm just not sure they're top 6 SPFL. You can kind of feel that they're still trying to get to the level. And Taneke versus him, he just had him on toast the whole game. Dundee United did well to put 2 around it at times, but then just kind of led into the Celtic attack, how they wanted it to work. So yeah, I think you just tip your cap to Celtic on this one. Dundee United hitting the woodwork 5 times is a bit of silver lining. And even that Hearts game, the way it went, they get battered, right? But there's a screamer, there's a penalty, there's a few things that kind of go on in that game as well. So there's a very thin silver lining that they can maybe just about hang on, get into these games now where they're not playing Rangers, Hearts and Celtic on the trot, maybe. So yeah, we'll see how it goes for them onwards here. And then in the next round, obviously, we've got a Glasgow derby, so we'll get to that. The next game that we had on the running list, we had Stenhousemuir, shock of the round, at home to Motherwell, pulling off a 1-0 victory with 113th minute. I think they go in 115th minute, right at the death, right at the last. And I really enjoyed watching the highlights of this one because it was a pure throwback, or not pure throwback, but seeing the wee stadium, seeing it well attended, the big team, seeing like B&M in the shopping centre and all that in the background behind the main stand. It had that kind of, like that old school cup game vibe to it. And I think Stenhousemuir, from what I've seen, did really well to level the occasion, make a football contest, didn't really let Motherwell bring their level to the game as much. Struggling to say that in any different ways, but I think, hard working effort. Marvin Bartley makes the headlines in this one.
Yes, Marvin Bartley, I think, has spoke as well about his team being really good off the ball, really hard workers and getting a certain ethos instilled in the team. And I think you've really seen that. And it's actually something that maybe mirrors Motherwell a little bit in terms of how they want to operate. Actually, I watched Anderson quite a bit, the centre mid for Stenhousemuir, Michael Anderson. When he signed a new contract when they were in League One, he'd been out at Broomhill and everything on loan at Forfar, he'd been kind of around. Really, really impressive footballer. I'm really surprised he's not made the step up. He's one that I actually kind of wished Dunfermline went for, sure up the midfield. Certainly looks like a class act in that midfield. Outside of that, no real superstars. Darren Jameson in goal, proper old school stalwart of the lower league, someone who I've seen play many, many a time. And he seems to really rise to these occasions as well. But yeah, not a weak Motherwell team by any means, but certainly one eye on the Freiburg game, which is obviously going to be sort of season defining for them. Do I think they'll come through it? Probably not, but I think it was the right choice to at least try and rest a few players, because we're going to come on to later on just to talk a little bit about transfers. Motherwell are really thin across the ground, and You can see it in two ways. People like Ross, Knight Liebel, Gerward Reich, obviously Hodge coming for the debut, White playing in midfield, Booth, 3 teenagers throughout the team. Good for the development of players, but they're getting thrown in because there isn't anybody else. Let's not try and sugarcoat it. So they need a bit more strength and depth. Certainly one for us to talk about a little bit later. But again, I think the lower league team, at least worth the result, taking them to extra time. After that, they really dug in, and yeah, I would say they're just about worth their win.
Yeah, a good value to them. And Motherwell made a bit of headlines as well for their team selection into the game. So you brought that up. A lot of rotation, a lot of academy guys coming in and getting the minutes as well as some recognised first team players, as you can see mainly in the front line. Ibrahim Said, Masminisi and Voigt all starting this one. And yeah, good luck to them, I suppose, in Freiburg. That's where they've got one eye on for this weekend or for this midweek ahead, isn't it? So yeah, Stenhouse Moorfield at the next round and a good buzz for them. The biggest result on paper, goals scored. We had Hearts at home to Inverness. Hearts really kicking on from that 4-0 victory against Dundee United at the weekend. Inverness gives them a bit of a scare here, getting a few goals back into it, making the game maybe a wee bit more tense than Hearts would have wanted at certain stages. But Hearts, I think, out of ranking, they're starting to flex. They're starting to roll now. They're in a real good rhythm. And I'm just away to just double check the starting lineups here because Calvin, I just wanted to quadruple check that. Yeah, because I only watched the highlights of this one as well. Calvin Miller again at left back in this one, popping up with 2 goals in this one. And I think it's maybe his subs have went, maybe he's moved around a little bit, but the identity of Hearts, how they're going to look this year, is crystallising now, it feels like.
Yeah, what you're starting to see is obviously some of the ideas. I think it's worth pointing out, first of all, Alfie Babbage, Alfie Stewart, absolutely excellent for Inverness, 2 loanees from Aberdeen. This is hopefully what not the partnership system, but what the loan system should look like. 2 players getting, they had experience in League One. They managed to bring them back on loan for the Championship season. Babbage had a goal quite cruelly disallowed, albeit with the benefit of a deflection anyway. But Stewart looks so lively, excellent ball carrier, great speed. And again, hopefully off the back of this, 2 boys that will go and fight for a place at Aberdeen next season. Calvin Miller, I think, actually did make a lot of his runs from left back, but it's incredible. They've identified the fact he's got such an engine, able to get up and down the pitch, and he can attack so many areas, inside channels. He can go outside as well, especially when McPake plays. It's honestly one of my favourite partnerships on that left-hand side. Now, Mato started on the left, but when McPake naturally cuts inside and Miller overlaps, they add overload on that left-hand side. I really think it's going to be a tool that Hearts use over and over again, for good reason. Miller is extremely threatening, took his goals really well as well. And I think a lot of people were saying last season, oh, well, everyone goes on about Jamestown. Yeah, it's only Braga, it's only Kizaridis. Well, out of those two, having spent, 400k between the two of them, Braga probably somewhere between 8 and 10 million value. They obviously go and get the 2 million for Kizaridis now. Well, I was really impressed with Karjota on the right-hand side. Someone who obviously is very left-footed. I think he was a similar profile to Chesnikov that they looked at, who they then moved on for a little bit of money after picking him up for nothing. But Karjota seems to be able to go both ways. His assist on his right foot was excellent, but his left foot is very, very strong. Set piece delivery, so he's someone who offers multiple facets to the attack. I was really impressed with him. I was really impressed with Josh McPake. Again, someone who I'm going to keep banging on about because I'm just so happy that he's getting a chance at this level. And I think he's really showing that he's such an intelligent player. And again, one other good one, James Wilson to come in. Yeah. Someone who, of course, found himself out on loan. Certainly not in Derek McInnes's plans. Again, a little bit next, we'll talk about maybe some positions to strengthen. Hearts may need to go another striker, a different type of striker, but it's good to see that he could deputise or maybe even take over from Bassi, who was taken off at half-time for James Wilson. I think Wilson made a massive impact, both in his link-up play and his ability to get on the end of crosses, on the end of things and provide some end product. So, yeah, impressed with Hearts, and I think the way that they play football, they are going to end up conceding goals. That's just simply a symptom of how they play. They're going to be fairly open. Of course, Jamie McCarter find himself at the back, which I don't think a lot of people would have expected after last season. I'm not a huge fan of his, but I think the way that they play, they are going to get caught out. But they've essentially got this mentality that Ange Postecoglou brought to Scotland. If you score 4, we're going to go and score 5. So it's something that's really refreshing, and so I'm glad that Hearts are starting to see the fruits of their labour because it was looking like a bit of a shaky start.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the Jamestown thing there because it is like, I kind of felt the out of ranking appointment and a lot of these signings was kind of accelerating USGification of Hearts and how they play and whatever. And all these little ingredients, I think Magnuson pairing with Renaud looked a lot more stable. I think Spittle's done well so far, don't get me wrong, but I think Magnussen, I've always been impressed when I've seen him. He's like a guy who just wins his duels, wins the ball, and doesn't really give much away. McCart, again, I think centre back, they could definitely do much better in terms of upper quality, but they do feel that they've got that kind of between Finlay, McCart, Magnussen, Borsnovic even as well, who played this game. They've got a bit of a foundation there of guys that were there last year and have kind of earned this Hearts status that they now enjoy, the way Hearts are flying. And yeah, honestly, I thought when they went 2-1, I knew the score, but when I was watching it, but when I seen that Inverness had went 2-1 up, I was like, Jesus, man, this is a good old fashioned cup game in that sense. It wasn't one way traffic, far from it. And Hearts really did need to work for it and fight for it. And all the subs they made have all been attacking subs as well. When we see, like you said, Wilson off the bench at halftime contributes, Braga off the bench, 60th minute contributes, as well as some of the other usual suspects we've seen so far. So Hearts, you mentioned Motherwell playing Freiburg. This is a huge week for SPFL clubs in Europe. And we probably won't really be able to have time to chat about that on the pod today. We'll probably catch up with it on Monday when we've got the aftermath to shake down. But for Hearts, and maybe Motherwell and maybe one or two other teams, if Europe doesn't really go into the group stage for them, let's see how it goes. Hearts have got a decent enough draw they could do well in, I would say. Although not an easy one, the cups are going to be where they maybe gain their success for the season, how they really hallmark the season, some sort of success. And there may be a title challenge again from Hearts, you never know. But if they're scoring this amount of goals, it's going to be hard to keep them away from top of the table for sure. Yeah, I think this was a good one for them. And the draw in the next round is pretty favourable, it must be said, out of all the draws that have went around. So good luck to them on that. The next one we come to is Hibs and Partick Thistle. Again, only one I managed to catch the highlights of. I thought Partick Thistle, every time I've seen them since Mark Wilson's been in, and it's been a few just fleeting matches of like playoffs and cups and that kind of thing, they never look that much below the level of whoever they're playing against, if that makes sense. They always are quite good for fighting man for man and keeping it tight. Hibs, again, similar to a lot of these clubs we've just mentioned, one eye on midweek, one eye on Europe, and against lower league opposition, just about getting the job done with a 1-0 victory here.
Yeah, Partick Thistle, really impressive team. According to the stats, they're 60% of the ball away at Easter Road. Like, for Mark Wilson, for his last job before Partick Thistle, to have been leaving Brecon at the bottom of League Two, to obviously go to Partick Thistle 18s, I think he maybe done a little stint with the women's team as well, but certainly coached the kids, came through, obviously was second choice to Brian Graham, who turned the job down. And the job he's done has been absolutely incredible. I think it shows you as well, it's very old school with the setup, having someone like Alex Ray as the assistant, someone who's more experienced, but happy to almost use his experience to help Mark Wilson feed off him, whilst Wilson has some of the ideas, but maybe doesn't have the experience himself. It's really, really smart from Partick Thistle what they've actually gone and done. I think Alex Ray directly as well, as much as sometimes on the radio has a bit of not the greatest opinions, but he's clearly got a very good footballing brain and he's a very good coach. He's brought a lot out of the midfield. I think maybe they were just missing Stanway in the team. Again, someone that last season they looked to so much, but even looking across the board, Crawford, Smith and Let Sosa, really solid. Seb Draws, again, coming in for a lot of praise and rightly so. Hibs just doing what Hibs really do. Owen Eld with a lovely finish. He is certainly looking like the one to watch. He was one who, again, last season I watched a couple of times when he was in Ireland, and already there were wheels in motion for taking him a little bit above Cambridge's standing. So ends up at Hibs, and I really don't think it'll be long before he's moving on again. He's just a player who's got a multitude of talent, a really sweet left foot, someone who I really enjoy watching. He's decent in the air as well. He can just do a bit of thing. But yeah, really impressive. Hibs is very much a case of they got the job done. Simple as that. They're in the hat for the next round. Obviously coming out against Ross County away in Dingwall. Not the easiest tie ever, but certainly on paper one that they'll be quite happy with, dodging some of the bigger teams.
Yeah, agreed. And yeah, on Partick Thistle, Fitzpatrick also played this game. That's a player that's had some kind of praise in the past and had a bit of a big future ahead of him, still kind of cutting his teeth in the game as it is. And Tony Watley in the line, a wee bit of old gold there as well. But the Hibs team was full strength, kind of. I know Chaiwa didn't start, but McGrath coming back in, Mulligan in midfield, Joe Newell returning back in. And yeah, maybe not Boyle up front, but really, really strong team from them. And I agree, Owen Elding has put in really good performances in the season so far, and definitely one of the ones to watch from Hibs. So yeah, good to see they've qualified, and yeah, just about getting through it in the end. The final game we had of the round was the beginning of Derek McInnes's Rangers reign, is all the chat that's coming out of it now. Rangers beat St Mirren, who have been top of the power rankings for me in the season so far, one of the best teams in the league. Rangers done them 5-1 on this game. Some of the goals, the Dragicevic one, absolute perler, pick it out, absolute screamer. Gassama was on fire. The whole team was really revved up for this one. You could really see it, and a huge result. How much did Rangers need this?
They really did need this. Derek McInnes, again, in front of the home fans, he was obviously really enjoying it at the end. I think it's very easy, and I am going to highlight him, but James Penrice just brought an energy that Rangers just haven't seen this season yet. Someone who was just always willing and always did, when he got the ball, move forward with it. Being really positive with both his ball carrying and his ball use. Obviously got his goal in the end, but his assist was more impressive, I think, managing to break. I think it was Finlay Curtis that actually slid a perfectly weighted pass into his stride. And without even looking up, he knew where Gassama was, sliding him in. Gassama goes over to congratulate him. Obviously, Yokota, he is maybe not necessarily offering you pace, but he's offering so much technical ability on that side. I've been really impressed with him. I believe Derek kind of said he was gubbed, and that's why he came off at half time. He said, I don't know what is the Japanese word for gubbed, but he said he was gubbed. And I think that's fair enough. He's been thrown in right at the deep end, not had a lot of football, obviously, before he moved over. And he's starting to come good. I think it's starting to click a little bit for Rangers. Interesting that they moved Dragojevic into the midfield. Chukwani came back in, had a couple of nice flicks and touches. Don't really think Chukwani's done a lot wrong in a Rangers shirt so far, but he's kind of got lost in the shuffle a little bit. What type of midfielder is he? Did he come in as an 8? Did he come in as like a kind of deep line 6? I don't think he's quite found his feet yet, but he had some nice touches and showed that he's certainly not a bad football player. I guess maybe one worry again, Fernandez, he's just looking miles off at this season. We're going to come on to transfers in a little second, but maybe something that could help him out. Maybe just give him a rocket up the backside to get himself in gear. In terms of St Mirren, obviously scored a really, really good goal, but defensive frailties, things that you didn't see in Stephen Robinson's team necessarily. Back line, again, we're going to speak about that in a little second, that is certainly ageing. I don't think they've got the greatest depth back there. Did speak a little bit about Chapman. Obviously, his distribution's excellent, but I feel like that's sometimes maybe what he's going to give you. He's not going to necessarily make mistakes, but I don't think he really covered himself in glory either. I wouldn't hang my hat on him to make any ridiculous saves across the season. I thought the Nadiri one was, whilst it was awkward, it was certainly savable. The Dragojevic one certainly was not. But even the Gassama one wasn't a great finish. Maybe could have done a little bit better and kept the deficit down, but I think that's maybe picking holes. St Mirren now get the chance to focus on the league, where they've obviously made a really good start. So I don't think they'll be too disappointed to go out. Games away to Rangers are not going to define their season.
Yeah, it's a great way of summing it up, I suppose. And I think when you see the results coming in for Aberdeen kind of kicking their season into gear, Hearts kind of kicking on as well. St Mirren had looked just as good in the league. Rangers had been kind of shaken. I don't think anyone would have expected St Mirren to get towed as bad as they did in this one. So a huge confidence booster for Rangers ahead of their qualifiers that they've got this week as well. And Chukwueze, I echo what you say there as well. From when I've seen him since he signed for Rangers, I thought he was going to be a big defensive midfielder. But in the games I've seen him play against Celtic and maybe one or two other ones here and there, very mobile, really likes playing in between the lines when he's maybe not outwardly an attacking midfielder, but if he's going to play a diamond kind of thing, or he's going to try and get a few more midfielders into the equation, a guy that will be able to fit a few different shapes and roles for them. So interesting to see how they're starting to piece all the puzzle together. I agree.
Maybe
Sorry, you go.
I was just going to interject and say maybe he fits that kind of roaming playmaker that you see in Glenn Kamara, successful under Gerrard. Similar maybe profile of player, someone who can come and collect deep, but also, like you said, find those half spaces in the number 10 area, find himself peeling out into those wide half spaces. It's yet to see how he does, but it was certainly a little bit more encouraging based on what we've seen previously.
Yeah, and then you get Paste in the mix with that with other players. It makes a big difference. Really like that in the first game. But I do agree. I think Penrice seemed to bring it all together for them in a way. Somebody who was a bit of a focal point on the wide area. Like you just knew he was going to give you that kind of energy up and down there. And when you've got, like your target man, Nadiri, and whoever else is going to be in the middle. Again, I hate to compare it to Celtic, but it's very much like the way Celtic have played with their fullbacks over the last couple of years as well, where you can see that it's been Greg Taylor or it's been Tierney, and other times it's been Alistair Johnson, where the team will go down one side of the pitch and the fullback is the guy that hugs the line, that goes all the way down the channel, allows other people to peel in, allows guys on the other side of the pitch to go back post, and you can kind of go from there. You don't see too often many teams that have symmetry at fullback now. It's kind of pick a side and go with it. And Rangers, especially in the absence of Tavernier, you kind of heard them all kind of screaming out for that again. And maybe it was misplaced in that regard, that it is maybe not him that they want, but it's that we know the right-hand side had something to it, and now no side had something to it. But Penrice might bring that on the left, it looks. So yeah, good for them. And so we get to the next round of the Cup. We've got a Glasgow derby, Celtic versus Rangers at Eye. We've got Kelly versus Aberdeen in Kilmarnock, Ross County at home to Hibs, and Stenhousemuir at home to Hearts. Should be a saucy set of quarterfinals. I think all these ones are Kelly and Aberdeen, two teams really looking to make a big mark this season in their own individual stakes. Hearts, as we mentioned, the same. They're playing Steny. Hibs, again, the same. They're playing Ross County. So very good opportunities for all four of those teams to think about making the final when you see that Celtic and Rangers are in one of the quarters. Any bold shouts for the quarterfinals, Hendo?
I think if we just go game by game, I think it's a good yardstick for Aberdeen, first of all. So playing on Killy's lovely new grass pitch, that'll really be a yardstick. Is Stephen Robinson fully converted, or does he go back to being fairly attritional on the pitch? That'll be a really good test of it, because if you're going to play football, it's got to be the best place to play football all season against a team who, like you said, a lot of teams are going to look at it and go, you've got the pitch that Celtic and Rangers offer you, but you're playing against the Kilmarnock. So that'll be a really good test of, has Stephen Robinson fully converted? I think Hearts will have too much for Stenhousemuir. As much as Steny are great off the ball, I think I've been really impressed with Hearts' attacking play. I think they'll blow them away. I think Ross County Hibs will be a lot closer than what you think, and I'm not just saying that because they put Dunfermline out. I think going to Dingwall is a difficult place to go. They are going to be well up for it. If you look at, obviously, they are a stick on to win League One just due to budgets and everything else. So this is really, if you're talking about something that's a little bit more flair-like and one game away from Hampden, a home game to do it, I think they will have a right good go. I could see that one maybe going to extra time, and I think Hibs might edge it. And Rangers against Celtic are going to be really interesting. Does Derek McInnes go with tactics that have been that have maybe worked to an extent in the past, or does he really see this as a development opportunity? I.e., does he stick with his man for man press? Does he go 4-4-2? Does he try and match up against Celtic and go directly up against them? Or, as you would like to think, because we spoke before about underdog tactics, does he scrap all of that and does he say, right, I am the Rangers manager, we are at home at Ibrox with 50,000 fans behind us, we're going to go and play Celtic off the park? So it's definitely the game of the round. There's no doubt about that. If I was going to edge it to anybody, I think I would have to edge it to Celtic, but I would not be shocked if Rangers have a good run of form between now and then. If they can add, and I'm going to say, I think they need 2 superstar signings. I think the more that I have a look at their squad, we were talking about raising the floor, I think they're still lacking 2 really outstanding players, i.e. Casper Hu, Camille Duran, for example. Celtic bring them in, they've elevated their attack to another level. I think Rangers need 2 as well. And if they manage to get the 2, it might actually be improving their whole right-hand side. It might be a right winger and a striker now that Trimiti's gone. We'll need to wait and see. If they do that and put their form together, I think maybe Rangers could do it.
Yeah, I think I'm only going to have a biased point of view on this one, but I think that this will be at the end of the transfer window. Teams will know what qualifications tournaments are in. Teams could look totally different, and yeah, it'll be a tough one to call. And yeah, better not miss this one. 12th of September. There's only one game after that before the international break, and it's also a Glasgow derby. So there's 2 of them within a week. The 12th of September, then the 20th. After that, we then get into the Nations League section. And we'll maybe come back to that in a second. But Scotland obviously got a new manager in town, so that should be pretty interesting for all of us, I think. Just go back to the fixtures. Sorry, it's the 20. Yeah, there we go. Fixtures. Yeah, 26th of September, Scotland, Slovenia. So Celtic and Rangers play each other twice in 8 days, and then it's away to international break. So yeah, that'll a saucy end to the end of the first chapter of the season before we get to an international break there for sure. Now, a segment we wanted to kind of prepare to come into this one today, Hendo, was we wanted to have a look. Well, we've got this wee bit of downtime between league fixtures. There's a lot of stuff that's going to be postponed down to European commitments and all the rest of it. Have a look at some of the teams that we've had in the league so far and think about with the remaining, let's call it fortnight of the transfer window, what's the one position a lot of these teams are still needing to reinforce and galvanise if they're going to make a real fist of it this season, whatever they're aiming for. Where would you like us to start with this one, Hendo? What team do you want to go with?
I think it's maybe good. Let's run from the top of the table down. I think that's a good way. So we'll start off with Celtic. I'm going to take the bias out of your hands just to make it easy. I think Celtic is an easy one. So of course they've sold Arne Engels, a championship record, 22 million plus maybe some add-ons in the background. I think it's a good deal for everybody involved. Arne Engels has been good without being outstanding. They managed to turn him around for essentially double the money that they paid. He's obviously shown probably his best game, actually, the game before he left. Ironically, he played extremely well, but certainly you could tell the impact that he made towards the end of the season in the split games. He will be a miss, but I think that's where Celtic will look to move quite quickly in the market. I think based on what they are looking at, obviously the lad from Torino, I believe, Quinny, you can maybe say a little bit more about that. He is coming in sort of like for like to just completely replace him. And I think in the meantime, Mika Bauer looks like a slightly more technical, maybe on-ball player, maybe more of a Hatate replacement, but certainly someone who could fill the gap in the meantime. Do you want to maybe elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, so the boy from Torino looks like a bit of a doppelganger for Arnie Engels, big kind of box-to-box mid, not rapid, but certainly has legs to cover ground. I think that feels like an easy kind of one-out situation. We'll see how Celtic do with that. I think the midfield is definitely where Celtic needs another player to come into this. The front line is pretty cooking. Sean Maloney said he's happy with the left-hand side as it's seen now. Jota coming back from injury, and then Yang and Taneki kind of job sharing in the meantime. Johnny Kenny's also seen in the depth chart for number 9, alongside Callum Osmond, Duran, and Ho. And then when you think about Duran's been playing right wing, Hassan's just been brought in from La Liga, and then Forrest can play both sides, Yang can play both sides. The front line is tippity top for me. Defence, like the backup left back thing's a big problem, obviously. Centre back Dane Murray divides opinion, but really, I don't think the defence needs any serious surgery. I think the team is just really lacking a midfielder now that's got some power in the team. And I love saying Bauer as if he's a big, powerful guy, but he's a wee, powerful guy. And I think to manage all these competitions, to fight on all these fronts, Celtic need another bit in midfield, I would say.
I would have to agree. Yep, definitely. Second in the table, St Mirren, Quinny. Do you want to take that one away? Who do you think they could, or what position do you think they could bring someone in?
So St Mirren, an interesting one, I would say, because I've liked a lot of their business that they've done so far. I'm pretty sure this is the most up-to-date version of their squad. I don't think they've signed anyone else since we last looked at this. They've put a lot of resources into the front line, as you can see here, between all the players that they had and that they've brought in. The midfield, I've quite liked how it so far with Ncio, Carr, and Phillips. I really like that. But when you look at the defence, there is just nobody back here. It's King, Fraser, Gogic, Field St John for left back, Richardson for right back. I don't think there's anyone missing from this. Maybe there is. I'm sorry if there is. Feel free to shout at me in the comments down below. But the defence is just far too thin. And like you mentioned with Chapman, I agree with you that Chapman looks like a decent keeper, but he doesn't really look like a match-winning goalkeeper. Where he's, and here, by the way, he did just save a penalty against St Johnstone last week as well, so maybe take that with a pinch of salt. But I think me and Hendo are trying to say between the six, facing shots, doesn't feel like that wall goalkeeper that you can see just making save after save after save, being that kind of hero in the net. And if that's the keeper you're going to run with, then the defence in front of him needs to be as airtight as possible. So Gogic and Fraser individually have looked cool, but the defence, the centre back, is the area I think really need to put some money into.
Yeah, definitely. And just one more to point out, Roland Adowu, they reckon will leave before the end of the window on that right wing. Jake Young looks kind of unconvincing when he's came on. So they could maybe, and obviously Ramos has played out there a little bit, but I think more of a natural number 10, certainly, especially if Phillips goes, I think they'll use him in that area. They could probably look to get someone on that right wing who could tuck inside and play within that system that they've got, someone with a bit of pace to obviously threaten him behind. Just Adowu's not really hit the ground running, so just a direct replacement for him, I think, quite useful as well.
I would agree.
Next up,
Goals.
Motherwell. I was going to say, so Motherwell, I've kind of written down that they just need players. Now, Motherwell have obviously a good system of finding players, that's for sure, but we already spoke about it's great that they had 3 teenagers in their League Cup team, but obviously, one, it's kind of been to their detriment as they looked a little bit weak on the day, and 2, let's be honest, they're playing because they don't really have anybody else. So we said obviously up top, Hendry's not really been seen for a while. I think he might be injured. The big Icelandic lad, he is also injured. He struggled with his visa for the HJK game, and Willie Vogt has not really set the head of the light just yet, albeit he's looked kind of likely. Booth, Lowry, White, obviously they're all going to get game time. Hodges came in, so that's a few more bodies in there. But in the back again, injured, O'Donnell, and this not really favoured, I don't think. Ross played 90 in the cup. And obviously, yeah, Williams was rested. He looks like he's going to be starting. McGee also injured in there, a utility player, someone who would be really handy to have fit, but at the moment they just don't have fit. So maybe they could use the loan market, look at some loans until the January window to get them through. Maybe just to bolster the squad, maybe look at some younger players to bring in and give some game time. But I think they just need bodies in the door in general.
Yeah, it's great to see that they're leaning on youth development, and I think Motherwell really want to keep that going, obviously with the success of Lennon Miller, and even more than that, a couple of others over the years have come through and done well. Max Johnson's another one that springs to mind that they sold into Europe for a couple of quid. So it's kind of hard to know where they see and where they value a lot of these young guys coming through. They clearly don't want to block them off. So I like the numbers they've got in defence. I like the goalkeeper. The backup keeper seems well regarded as well. They gave him minutes in the cup, which is cool. And yeah, I really like the front line, but it is thin. And I think that's probably what I would be looking at, because I was just going to say as we're leaving St Mirren, goals are going to be what separates a lot of these teams for who's fourth, who's third, who's fifth, and so on and so forth. So as much as Motherwell have been really good defensively and offensively, unlikely to get by Freiburg, so they're probably only focusing in on the league going forward. Let's see how it goes. Don't wish them ill, obviously. But Regan Charles-Cook doesn't really fill me with much confidence that he's going to get 15 or above. Ibrahim Said is great, but again, I don't think he's that guy. Masfinisi, who knows? And Voigt, kind of really who knows in a different way. So I don't know, a goal scorer would be a real big thing for them if they don't progress in Europe, obviously. They're now out the League Cup. So Motherwell could have a real good run at the league here if they have a talisman really turn up in the front line. That's how I see it, really.
Yeah, agreed for sure. Quinny, Hearts, we obviously speak about Jamestown a lot. One position you think they could maybe still strengthen?
Oh, well, again, we were kind of chatting about this when we spoke about the breakdown of the last game, weren't we, in terms of striker, Bassi coming off, Wilson coming off the bench seems like a bit of an improvement. Braga's been in this kind of hybrid role recently. And I don't know, the first couple of games, I think Hearts don't really feel like they have a focal point. They don't really have an arrowhead on their attack. That when they're still scoring goals and they're mixing up well, interchanging well. That's the one thing that I do think against some of the bigger teams and some of the harder games, especially if they do qualify for the group stages and want to go on a bit of a run. Having that guy at the top end of the pitch that can just squeeze it through. Maybe that could be James Wilson. Who knows? Bassi maybe does kick on. I'm not sure he becomes that guy really, but because of Edith now out of the picture, they've got a couple of quid. If Braga goes, I think that really does become the spot that they need to go fill that real kind of, I don't want to say a poacher, so it's not really the kind of thing, but a real talisman, a real leader at the top end of the pitch. They maybe could do with some reinforcements in defence. I'm not a big fan of the defence really from front to back, if I'm honest, or top to bottom here. But the midfield is cool. The wide areas are cool. I think the options are there are good. And even the up front is kind of fine, but I don't know if they're going to kick up a gear. I think scoring more will help them better than maybe defending a bit better. How do you see it?
Yeah, worth mentioning, obviously, Craig Halkett to come back, a big rock in centre defence,
Yeah.
because without him, that looks a little bit weak. I'd say Jan Danda probably needs a loan. He could do with maybe going out to one of the bottom six teams like he done to Dundee. And I'm the same as you, but I would go for a slightly different style of striker. I would go for someone who threatens in behind. Hearts seem pretty quick on transition. Obviously, we've spoke already about using Calvin in the left back role and obviously having him bomb on almost the furthest line forward. But I feel like they could also do with some other games where they create that space and they've just got a striker to break through. I would say, obviously, yeah, Kabangu moving on, and I would have a Kabore replacement. That's what I would go for. They've obviously tried to look at his profile, a little bit of a powerhouse, someone who can obviously threaten with pace in behind, but his technical level is just not quite there. So I think a replacement for him would be where I would look.
Love it.
Next up, Dundee FC, Stephen Presley's boys. I think this is quite an easy one now. Of course, Simon Murray coming off with a really bad looking injury. Very talismanic player. Looks like he might be out for the season, depending on how bad it is. They could certainly do with another striker who, of course, he's been stepping into that number 10 role a little bit. Wesley's almost been farthest forward. I believe I've seen Ashley Hay is injured as well.
Yeah,
So really looking thin up that top end. Depending on who they could get, of course, they've signed from all over the place, but they could really push the boat out, I guess, maybe look for some loans from the top end. Could they maybe tempt someone away from Celtic now that they've got many attackers? Of course, I'm talking maybe from the younger side of things. Who knows? But they've certainly been known to be a team that gives some minutes to younger players anyway. So definitely that striker area for me.
Yeah, I think there's a few teams where we look at the striker position, and when you say that, I was actually looking at the St Mirren team and thinking if they had Johnny Kenny in their team, they'd probably do a lot better quite quickly. And yeah, a guy like that could make a big difference. There's one thing I was saying to you before preparing for this is I don't feel super confident on recommendations for a lot of these teams because they do shop in some wacky and wonderful places, and a lot of it is Premier League 2 and some youth football, League 1 in England and whatever. But there is also Zan Basir, who they pluck out from like the Slovenian division, and you always just get a lot of these random transfers in the SPFL. So I really like the defence. It's not that deep. I really like the midfield. It has a bit of depth. The boy Bevan and Forrest feels like a nice little kind of double act for right forward, right wing, however you want to think of it. But yeah, with Murray being out for a good couple of weeks, I think Hayes a similar length of injury. Wesley's been good, but he's been part of a unit. He's not really a leader up there. I think a striker is a big thing, and goals are the most expensive thing in football. Dundee notoriously working on a bit of a tight budget. And Presley likes thin squad. I think he likes core of 18 or 19 guys, however many we've got here. So I think he'll be cautious with who he adds in because these guys won't be injured forever. But you do feel looking at the immediate situation, a bit more firepower is going to help them. I think beyond that, it's just a wee bit of depth, really, isn't it? They've got good options from the bench. It's just really if they do get a dearth of injuries, loss of form, a couple of suspensions pile up on each other or something, you might then feel that they're undermanned. But failing any catastrophe, they're kind of well decked in most spaces.
Yes, I would agree. Next up, St Johnstone, one that you are quite a fan of, Quinny. Take it away. Who do you think they should, or where do you think they should strengthen?
Well, I was certainly a big fan of how they started the season, really going all out at it. Didn't do too bad against St Mirren, obviously. No cup action for them because they didn't get through in the group. And I don't know, I think for teams that get promoted to stay in the division, the number one thing they need to have is goals up their sleeve. St Johnstone, I think, will bring some goals to this one. And it's a double edged sword. You need to be able to score goals, but of course, you need to be able to keep them out. Most teams that struggle come up and just try and defend, but then they really struggle to get goals. St Johnstone, I think they're the converse of that, where they're going to be happy to attack. They've got goals in their team with the likes of Fowler and Payton and Fotheringham, even Gullen, Alvarez if he plays. But that defence, there's a left back that's about to come in. We've seen that reported. We were chatting about it last week on the channel. Alic, I think his name was. So we'll see if he comes in and how good he is and all the rest of it. I think that's how you spell his name. But you were saying you're not a big fan of the right backs. I think this Diabate looks the part, but the defence is maybe missing a bit of something, isn't it, for SPFL standards?
I think so. I think Jack Baird probably not a Premiership level centre back, and I think Dan Finlayson's shown himself not to really be a Premiership level right back. Even Liam Smith, someone who was mainly a Championship player, went over to Ireland, didn't play all that much, has came back. I think he was actually some injury cover when he first came back to St Johnstone. He's found himself in a starting berth, which I'm not 100% sure how that's happened. So maybe someone who could cover that side, and maybe someone who could give St Johnstone a little bit more flexibility. So if it's someone who could play maybe right of a three and then also be able to play right back, actually quite similar to maybe Jaden Richardson at St Mirren, for example, someone who is able to play on that side and cover sort of half spaces and stuff as well. Beside of that, they've obviously, like you said, they've got pace up that front end. They've got proven goal scorers. I think we're all really excited to see how this Alvarez gets on. Bit of a wild card. Yeah, obviously still injured, so the jury is absolutely out and see how he does. He could bring a bit of X factor. It could be terrible. But yeah, looking forward to seeing him. And outside of that, I think they have a fairly strong unit for what they can actually offer to the Premiership. So yeah, that right side, the one strengthen on. Into the bottom six, Quinny. So maybe just rattle through these just for time. So Hibs, I think we'd said both about sort of centre mids if there's any departures. Obviously, Chaiwa and Mulligan quite popular with some teams and some scouts. And then maybe some centre back cover. So we said about Rocky Bashiri being out for the season. Grant Hanley was rumoured to maybe be away on loan. So that would leave him a little bit thin, especially with playing the three centre backs. So I think Hibsies, they've done a lot of their work quite early, and that would just be about bringing in a bit of cover across the board.
Yeah, I see it. The defence, yeah, maybe a wee bit thin. And Iredale, I like him, but O'Hara, obviously, if Hanley goes out, yeah, there's maybe a divided opinion. I don't think they're everyone's cup of tea. The midfield, I actually don't even have Chaiwa and Mulligan here because I think last time we were looking at Hibs, we were talking about what does it look like when they go. And I think that's really striking, isn't it? The boy Abdullahi looked like he had some decent experience in England, not really translated yet. And in between Newell, Mane, Campbell, they're all quite fine, aren't they, without being upper end. McGrath
Yeah.
always threatens to be amazing but gets injured, and Wright's made a good start. So yeah, it's the engine room part of the midfield, isn't it? Again, I like a lot of what they've got going on up front. So yeah, big question marks in midfield, and again, maybe the loan market's something they go for because I know Hibs, like you say, they've did a lot of their business already. They've got some pretty good players on their books. They've not been too shy with splashing some cash here and there. Fair enough, one or two of them are loans, but yeah, very much an engine room job, I think, here.
Agreed. Aberdeen, Quinny, where do you think they could strengthen?
Oh, good question. Very interesting to hear what you think. I think we're kind of on the same page, but when you look at the depth that they've got here, it looks very good to a position everywhere. But that second draft of defence, Jack Milne's not bad, I suppose. Depends on your own POV, I suppose. But Lewis Mayo, happy. I don't know. I think I'm not a big fan of Lions and Aremu, but the team is so one-dimensional, I think, in the defence to midfield area here that I don't see him really changing the midfield up. I think the defence is probably where they need somebody that could come in, lift the level a little bit. Cadden's a good player. I've liked what I've seen of this Nesta. Happy, to be honest with you, I think it's okay, but I just think if he gets out or Mayo goes out, I think it goes down quite sharply, the level that they've got here. And with Stephen Robinson building his team on the defence before the attack, although there's good numbers there, I'm not quite sure levels there. So I would kind of worry for Aberdeen there. Intello feels like he's fixed a big problem up front. It's hard to question the midfield, really. So I think it's really centre back you're looking at.
Yeah, agree. I will say on that graphic there, so Milanovic is away on the left-hand side. He's went back to Australia. Lobben has went on loan to Dunfermline, the right back. Tobers and Nooster, they're both injured until sort of late August, it reckons. But I'd imagine by the time they get their fitness, it will be closer to sort of October. So there you go, just depth across the board, sort of struggling a little bit. I guess one place, yeah, so centre back they could certainly look, but I'd like to see them actually add someone who could maybe go in and start there. Lewis Mayo and Dan Happ seems like a very mid-table centre back pairing. I feel like they
Yeah.
could certainly have someone who at least is of that level to kind of break the mould. I think Tobers and Nooster are a little bit of a hangover of Jimmy Tilleen. I'm not sure they will necessarily play a hell of a lot, but it remains to be seen. They obviously played a little bit before. Gavin Malloy come in, played a little bit, but I don't think he's necessarily part of the long-term plan. So yeah, a kind of mold-breaking centre back would be a good one. Rangers, Quinny. So I think I will maybe go for this one. I think they need a left-footed left centre back. It's obviously Fernandez playing out there just now. Daniel's come in and look really decent. But of course, Fernandez is the one, their asset, their kind of golden goose, and he's the player that's been really, really poor, making mistakes, not switching on. He just needs a bit of a boot of the backside. So someone who naturally plays out there. I think they need someone in the bracket of the age of 27 to 30, to be honest. Someone who has that experience. Of course, they tried with Derek Cornelius. It didn't work out with injury and what have you. So I think they need that profile. And of course, we were saying about the right back slot. I've seen people talking about Austin Scally at right back, and obviously he's in there in the depth chart, but he's obviously clearly not favoured, and it's at the point where I think McInnes needs players for now, not for the future. And I think a lot of it will then come down to who can you get in the market. Similar to Penrice has been a really good deal to cover for Roman's injury. Can they get someone, I think, that mould breaking right back slot? And of course, as you can see, no right wingers on the depth chart at the moment. They certainly need someone out there. I think that's where they can really go and splash the cash, maybe 10 million-ish on that side. This would obviously be predicated on maybe selling Raskin. I think that's the only real sellable asset that they've got now that isn't injured, like Trimiti. I think for now, performances scare a couple of people off until January and see how he gets on. Yes, you quote on that side, of course, but I think that's where they can really go and break the mould.
Yeah. I think the midfield is, again, super stacked. They've put a lot of resources into attack. Obviously, Chermiti's a bit of bad fortune on their part. But yeah, the defence, as much as like Macania, Fernandez, all these guys, I just feel when I've watched them the last couple of games, the defence has been leaderless. But it's kind of been a set of individuals rather than a unit. Maybe that's a bit of team cohesion. Maybe that fixes itself over time. But I just say when you look at the depth here, if something happens to Macania or Fernandez, what are they doing at centre back down the river without a paddle? So I think a senior, what Godfrey was meant to be for them, who's now injured for like a fair length of time. They need a guy that's played higher level, maybe a wee bit of damaged goods about them. You're kind of stuck with that, sadly, with the position we're all in. If you're picking from that top of the food chain, there's a reason they'll be coming to Scotland, isn't there? So I think somebody that's got that kind of top end experience as a centre back that can bring them together would do them very well. The whole defence to attack thing, I liked Asgard in the first game, seems to have dropped out of favour ever since. We mentioned what Chuck Huani can do. Raskin's still trying to get flogged in the shop window, so maybe they might be all right with that, especially if they're playing two up top. There's less of an onus for attacking mids when they're playing everything wide. So yeah, I think centre back's the big one for them.
Yes,
Rangers.
agreed. The last three, let's go quick fire, Quinny. So Falkirk, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think Falkirk, I had some enthusiasm around that was doing his own recruitment and doing well done, well researched and well thought out recruitment. And I like the look of all these guys when they brought them in. But proof in the pudding from the first couple of games is they've lost their cutting edge. They've lost teeth in the attack, really. The boy McKeever's looked the part. I agree. You said something similar before we came on. I thought Laidlaw was going to look really good. Not happened yet. Parkinson's looked better than him. And yeah, Gardner missed a game injured in the warm-up, looked okay on debut. I don't know. Yeah, I just think up front is really if they don't score enough goals, Falkirk, they're in a lot of trouble. Really.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'll just correct you slightly in terms of I don't fancy any of their strikers, if I'm being honest. So
Fair
Ross
enough.
McKeever didn't play a lot last season when they finished top six, and now he's coming and played a little bit more. So don't rate him. Parkinson, he's done okay, but I think strikers where they need someone, and I think they really do. And I think the same for Dundee United as well. So they have obviously brought in attacking players, but I think we've seen as well. So Lachlan Rose will work really hard. I obviously likened him to Chris Kane. Chris Kane obviously had a very, very poor goal scoring record in the Scottish Premiership, hence finding himself in the Championship. So I think they either need to really invest some time in Sapsford, because you've seen when he hit the bar with that shot, he's clearly got a strike on him. But I think they could really do with a really dominant centre forward, be able to sort of anchor their play a little bit and get them a little bit higher up the field, maybe a little bit more direct, and somebody to get on the end of those crosses.
Yeah, I'm with you all the way on this one. I think that the front line, this Rose guy, I don't think he I don't think he scores more than 5 goals this season. That's just the way he's looking to me. He might get a couple of assists. He might have a lot of secondary contributions. He forces somebody into a mistake, and then Randall gets on the ball, crosses it for Sapsford, that kind of thing. But I've not seen enough from him in the first couple of games. It makes me think, yeah, he'll score more than 10. Mitsoko's got some good attributes, but I agree with you. If you can somehow get Sapsford, he seems to really like bringing Benny through off the bench, and maybe when he's fit, you'll see more of him. Same with Mergam. Randall's looked all right, but I think you're going to see him get better throughout the season. I think he's shown he's got, same as Sapsford. Again, Rose, I'm just not as convinced on. So yeah, I think if they have somebody in here that could get them 10 to 15 goals, it makes them a lot better. The defence, I've been really impressed with Forbes and a lot of their organisation. The midfield is good. I think the midfield is about good enough. But yeah, if they don't score goals, there was their big problem last year, Dundee United. I never seen them scoring. I always felt if they get more than one goal, it'll be a big surprise. And Jim Goodwin made that maybe a new season resolution for the year that they would be more attacking, he would change the shape. And I like the changes he's made, but I don't think he's got the ammunition up there to see it through.
Yep. And then finally, Kilmarnock. I mean, if you look down the league table, Dundee United conceded the most with 5, and then it's Kilmarnock out in front with 9, conceding 2 in the cup. As we said, it has to be defenders.
Yeah.
Kilmarnock really, really need some defenders in there. They need to shore that up. I don't think there's much more you really need to say.
Yeah, it's basically the be all and end all of the team right now, isn't it? What they're doing in defence, because this diamond midfield that they're doing, they're just incessant on exposing the defence to turnover. And the boy Stanger or Stanger or whatever, he's been linked away. Yafiko, I don't know, it could be all right. Dees is kind of all right, isn't he? But there's just little here. And Stryek, he kept in for the Hearts game, which I was surprised by because I thought he was pretty horrible in the last game against Celtic. I thought maybe one of these other guys might have got a chance, but maybe not in a derby. So it feels, yeah, Kilmarnock are running back towards their own goal. There's a big chance that they're conceding. That's not a good place to be in.
Yeah, definitely. And even you say they play that diamond in field, they just give up so much space in those wide areas, and you don't really have a lot of faith in those wide fullbacks do a lot of 1-2 defending. So they either need to change the shape or they need to change the personnel, but they need to do it quickly.
Big time. So yeah, tons of stuff to get stuck into on this one today. We actually planned for a little bit more, but we've just about ran out of time. So thanks to everyone that's hung out with us this afternoon, going through League Cup reaction, the next round of the Cup, as well as at this stage of the season in the dying hours of the transfer window, what's still on the agenda to get your team, to get all the teams for the season ahead. Hendo, it's been an absolute pleasure, my man. Thanks for joining me.
Likewise, mate, I am obviously looking forward to some of the midweek action. All the teams, or all the big teams, are in European action. So, one, from a coefficient standpoint, I hope everybody does really well. And 2, it'll be a really good, I've said yardstick already this episode, but a really good yardstick to see where is Scottish football. We've certainly not embarrassed ourselves to the level we normally do in Europe. I really, really hope that at least one of the teams goes one step further.
Likewise. Good luck to everyone, and we'll catch you on the next one. Take care, everyone.